It was past midnight when Daniel Whitmore pulled his rental car off the empty interstate and into the cracked parking lot of the Glenwood Inn. The sign above the building flickered in the rain, the neon letters buzzing like dying insects. Glenwood Inn in vacancy, one letter was dead. The N in inn, so it read Glenwood I _ instead, like the place was still deciding what it wanted to be. Daniel killed the engine and sat for a moment, listening to the rain on the roof of the car. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than he realized. He told himself he was just tired, that was all. Too many hours on the road, too much caffeine sweating through his veins. But the truth was, there was something about the building that made his stomach tighten. It was 3 stories of tired bricks and black windows, the kind of place you pass 1,000 times on back roads without ever wondering who might be inside. The only lights were the buzzing sign and the yellow glow spilling out from the lobby window. He told himself he didn't have a choice. His eyelids felt like they were lined with sandpaper. Another hour on the road and he'd end up in a ditch. So he grabbed his overnight bag, stepped out into the rain, and crossed the lot toward the entrance. The lobby door was glass, streaked with water and fingerprints. Through it, Daniel could see the front desk, and the man behind it. The receptionist was tall, too thin for the dark suit he wore. His hair was slicked back, black and shiny like a raven's wing. He didn't move as Daniel pushed the door open, just stood there with his hands folded on the counter. Something about him made Daniel's footsteps slow. The man's skin was pale, almost gray under the fluorescent light. His eyes were the color of weak tea, but he was smiling, the kind of smile you see in old photographs. "Evening," Daniel said, trying to shake off the unease crawling up his spine. "Need a room for the night?" The man inclined his head slightly, as if Daniel had confirmed something he already knew. "Of course," the receptionist said softly. His voice was smooth, too smooth, like a radio announcer from the 50s. "We've been expecting you." Daniel blinked. "Expecting me?" The man slid the guest book forward. "Sign here, please." Daniel set his bag down beside the counter and looked at the guest book. It wasn't the electronic check-in system you see in hotels now. No glowing tablet, no computer monitor humming with reservations and credit card forms. This was an actual book. A fat leather-bound ledger with yellowing pages that looked older than the desk itself. Daniel touched the pen lying across it. The thing was a fountain pen, its brass tip gleaming faintly under the harsh ceiling lights. The male receptionist, he hadn't given his name yet, watched silently as Daniel bent over the book. The page was filled with signatures in looping cursive. Names and dates written in the kind of handwriting people don't have anymore. Some of them were faded nearly to ghosts. Daniel frowned. The last entry was dated October 12, 1979. That couldn't be right. He glanced up. The male receptionist's smile didn't change. "Don't worry about the dates," the man said softly, his eyes never leaving Daniel's face. "Just sign." The pen felt heavy in his hand, like a little piece of lead. His own name looked strange when he scrawled it on the page, as if it didn't quite belong with the others. He put the pen down and cleared his throat. You might want to update your records," Daniel said, forcing a chuckle. "Some of these names are ancient." The male receptionist tilted his head, studying him with a kind of polite amusement, as though Daniel had said something mildly inappropriate at a dinner party. "We keep things the old way here," he said. His voice was calm, precise, every syllable perfectly shaped. Daniel shifted his weight. He didn't like the way the man spoke, or the way his tea-colored eyes seemed to look straight through him. "How much for the night?" Daniel asked. The male receptionist didn't answer right away. He just looked down at the ledger, then back at Daniel, the smile still fixed in place. "Payment," he said at last, "will be settled later." That made Daniel pause. What's that supposed to mean? The man turned, plucked a key from the rack behind him. Not a keycard, an actual brass key dangling from a long wooden tag burned with the number 6. He set it on the counter between them. "Room 6, the man said. Atop of the stairs end of the hall. Daniel picked up the key slowly. It was ice cold. The stairs creaked under Daniel's shoes as he climbed to the second floor. He glanced back once. The male receptionist was still standing at the desk, perfectly still. His pale face tilted up as though he were listening to something Daniel couldn't hear. That smile hadn't changed. Daniel quickened his pace. The second-floor hallway stretched out before him like something out of an old postcard, Dougly brown carpet. Wallpaper with faded flowers, dim wall sconces, throwing weak pools of yellow light. The air smelled faintly of dust and something else. Something metallic, like old pennies. He found room 6 at the very end. The key turned stiffly in the lock. The door groaned when it opened, as though it hadn't been used in years. The room wasn't terrible, just tired. Sagging double bed with a floral bedspread. A dresser with a cracked mirror above it. Heavy curtains framing a window that looked out on nothing but the dark woods beyond the parking lot. Daniel tossed his bag onto the bed. The rain had eased, but the wind was picking up, rattling the glass. He checked his phone. 12:47 a.m., no signal. Figures. He was about to kick off his shoes when he froze. Somewhere down the hallway, a door slammed. The sound was sharp, echoing through the empty inn. The hallway was empty. The lights buzzed faintly overhead. Another door slammed. Closer this time. Daniel felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. "Hello?" he called, his voice sounding too loud in the stillness. No answer. He stepped into the hall, looking left and right. All the other doors were closed, their numbers crooked on the wood. Something moved at the far end. Daniel squinted. It looked like a man. Then the figure stepped back into the shadows and was gone. Daniel's mouth had gone dry. He backed into his room and locked the door. The wind moaned against the window. Downstairs faintly, the old desk bell rang once. The sound of that bell, sharp, metallic, echoing faintly through the old building, gnawed at Daniel's nerves. He sat on the edge of the bed, listening. Maybe someone else checked in, he thought. That made sense, didn't it? Receptionist had been there for him. Why not another traveler pulling in from the storm? Except the parking lot had been empty when he arrived. Not a single car except his own. The bell rang again. Daniel grabbed his phone out of habit. Still no signal. A faint headache pulsed behind his eyes as he got up, shoved his shoes back on, and left the room. The hallway felt longer this time, darker too. The sconces hummed faintly, their bulbs flickering as he passed. By the time he reached the top of the stairs, the bell rang a third time. The sound seemed louder now, sharper. The lobby was empty when he descended the last creaking step. The desk stood where he'd left it, the ledger still open on the counter, but the receptionist, he was gone. "Hello," Daniel called. No answer. The silence of the place settled around him like dust. Daniel moved closer to the desk. Something about the ledger drew his eye again. Pages looked thicker now, the handwriting darker somehow. He swore his name, Daniel Whitmore, had slipped lower on the page, as though other names had appeared above it while he was gone. The bell rang again. Daniel jumped, spinning toward the sound. It came from the counter itself. The little silver bell sat there, perfectly still, its surface dull with age. It rang again, even though nothing touched it. Daniel backed away. A floorboard creaked somewhere off to his left. He turned slowly toward the sound. The male receptionist was standing in the doorway that led to the back hall, watching him. Daniel hadn't heard him come in. "Sorry," Daniel said, his voice tight. "Didn't mean to snoop. Thought I heard the bell," the man said softly. "Yeah, it keeps ringing." The male receptionist's pale face didn't change. "It does that," he said. His voice was quieter now, almost thoughtful. "Sometimes it calls them." Daniel frowned. "Calls who?" The man smiled faintly, as though Daniel had just asked a question with a very funny punchline. "Guests," he said. Daniel's skin prickled. Daniel stayed where he was, a few paces from the desk. Something about the receptionist's stillness made him feel like he was speaking to a statue, not a man. "What do you mean, calls them?" Daniel asked. The male receptionist's eyes slid to the bell, then back to Daniel. His thin lips twitched, almost like a smile. "People hear it," he said. "They come in from the rain, or the dark, or the road." His voice had taken on a kind of sing-song rhythm, quiet and slow, like someone telling a story by firelight. "They check in, just like you did." Daniel shifted uneasily. "And then what?" The male receptionist's eyes seemed to gleam faintly in the dim light. "They stay." A cold feeling moved through Daniel's chest. "Forever?" he said before he could stop himself. The male receptionist tilted his head slightly, as if amused by the question. "Some call it forever. Some call it till the inn is full." Daniel glanced at the guestbook again. The yellowed pages. The names stretching back decades. He swallowed. "This place, how long has it been here?" The male receptionist looked past him, toward the rain-streaked windows. "Since before the highway," he said softly. "Before the cars, before the wires in the air. It was built when people traveled with horses and lanterns, when the nights were longer." Daniel didn't like the way he said longer, as if the dark back then had been heavier, thicker somehow. The man's voice dropped lower. "They say the owner made a bargain," he murmured. "A place where travelers could rest. But nothing comes free, Mr. Whitmore." Daniel stiffened. He didn't remember telling the man his name. Daniel began, but the male receptionist spoke over him. "Room 6 was the first," he said softly. "The walls still remember." Daniel felt something crawl across his scalp, a slow shiver moving from his head to his spine. "What happened in room 6? The male receptionist's pale face finally changed. The smile slipped a little. He leaned closer across the counter, his eyes like pools of weak tea. "They never leave, Mr. Whitmore," he whispered. "None of them ever leave." Daniel backed away from the counter, his pulse thudding in his ears. The receptionist's words hung in the air like cigarette smoke. "They never leave." Something in the man's tone made Daniel want to grab his bag, sprint out into the storm, and drive until sunrise. But his keys were upstairs. His phone had no signal. And there was something else, something he couldn't explain, a pull in his gut. As if the Glenwood Inn had sunk invisible hooks into him the moment he signed that book. He heard it then. Footsteps. Soft ones. On the floor above. The ceiling creaked faintly with each one. Daniel looked up, his breath snagging in his throat. "Someone else checked in?" he asked. The receptionist just stared at him. The footsteps continued. Slow, deliberate, pacing back and forth above them. Then another sound joined them, a whisper, faint just at the edge of hearing. Like a radio tuned between stations, Daniel's skin prickled. "What is that?" he asked. The receptionist didn't answer. His eyes flicked toward the stairs. Daniel turned. A figure was standing halfway up the staircase. A man, or what had once been a man, dressed in a soaked, tattered overcoat. His head was bent at an unnatural angle, as if his neck had been snapped. Water dripped steadily from his sleeves onto the carpet. Daniel stumbled back a step, his breath catching. "Hey, are you?" The figure raised its head slowly. The face was pale, eyes clouded like milk. The skin around its mouth was cracked, split open in places as though it had been pulled from deep water and left too long in the sun. Daniel froze. The thing stared at him for 3 long seconds. Then it turned and walked back upstairs without a sound. Daniel's voice cracked when he spoke. Who the hell was that?" The receptionist's face was expressionless. "Another guest," he said softly. Daniel's heart thudded painfully. "I'm leaving." The man behind the desk shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "You signed the book." Daniel didn't answer. Moving fast across the lobby, toward the front door. The front door. The rain outside had slowed to a mist, but the parking lot was empty, black, waiting. He grabbed the handle and yanked. The door didn't budge. He pulled harder, his shoulder muscles straining. The glass rattled, but held fast, as though bolted shut. The receptionist hadn't moved from the desk. "Doesn't open after midnight," he said calmly. "Not from the inside." Daniel spun toward him. "What the hell kind of place is this?" The man just looked at him, pale and patient, like a teacher waiting for a child to finish throwing a tantrum. "Let me out," Daniel said, his voice sharp now. "You signed the book," the man repeated softly. "You claimed the room." Daniel's pulse was hammering in his neck. He took a step toward the desk, ready to drag the man out from behind it if he had to, when something moved at the top of the stairs. Another figure. A woman this time, thin hair, hanging in wet strands over her face, a hospital gown clinging to her frame. She gripped the railing with both hands, her knuckles bone white. The sound she made was worse than a scream. It was a wheeze, a rasping inhale, like someone whose lungs were full of water. She started down the stairs slowly, her bare feet slapping the wood. Daniel backed toward the lobby wall, his eyes darting for anything in open window, a phone, anything. The woman reached the bottom step. Her head turned slowly toward him. Daniel saw her face then, or what was left of it. Skin gray and peeling, lips drawn back from blackened teeth. Her eyes were bottomless sockets, dark holes sunk deep in her skull. They gagged, stumbling sideways. Behind him, the bell rang again. More footsteps. Dozens now. From above, from the back halls, from behind closed doors. The receptionist finally moved, straightening to his full height. "They hear the bell," he said. His voice was calm, almost reverent. "They always come." Daniel's hand found the key to room 6 in his pocket, cold, heavy. He didn't remember putting it there. The lobby was full of them now. Figures emerging from stairwells and hallways, from shadows that hadn't been there seconds ago. Men in old suits stained with water and earth. Women in dresses from another century, their faces pale masks of ruin. A boy with no eyes clutching a broken teddy bear. All of them silent, all of them turning toward Daniel. The air felt heavy, too thick to breathe. Daniel backed against the wall, the brass key digging into his palm. "I don't belong here," he said, his voice shaking. "I'm not. This isn't I just needed a room for the night." The receptionist stepped out from behind the desk for the first time. His shoes made no sound on the carpet. His face was calm, polite, the same faint smile lingered like a shadow on his lips. "You signed the book," he said softly. "It's all it takes." The guests were closer now, surrounding him slowly, a ring tightening with every heartbeat. Their heads twitched as though listening to something only they could hear. Daniel gripped the key harder. "Room 6, the receptionist said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Top of the stairs. End of the hall. It's waiting." The figures parted slightly, leaving a narrow path toward the staircase. Daniel didn't want to go. Every nerve in his body screamed at him to run, to break a window, to claw his way through the door if he had to. But his feet moved anyway. One step, another, up the stairs. The guests closing in behind him, like a funeral procession. At the end of the hallway, room 6 waited. The door was warped. The number burned into the wood. Daniel slid the key into the lock. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. The door opened. The smell hit him first. Damp, earthy, like graves after rain. The room was wrong. It was bigger than it had any right to be, stretching deep into shadows that seemed to breathe. Shapes shifted in the corners, beds, chairs, bodies. He couldn't tell. He felt the pull then, like gravity had doubled inside that room. The door slammed behind him. Darkness swallowed the hall. Last thing Daniel heard before the world went black was the faint, polite voice of the receptionist calling through the door. "Welcome to the Glenwood Inn, Mr. Whitmore. Payment has been received." And with that, the receptionist who wasn't real ends with Daniel claimed by the inn. Joining the other guests who never leave,